CEE Brown in your face.
Have you heard of Everything at Once?
Do you know about Everything at Once?
It's internationally known.
Aliens listen to it.
It's the best ever.
If there's something you're looking for in the 814, or feeling a little bored and think there ain't no more, check out Everything at Once and allow it to be your source. It's that raw podcast that's always showing support, highlighting the scene. No need to take I-90 to Peep or 79 to see how it be. Interviewing your locals with mindsets that are global. Innovators and creators on every single upload. So much going on in the EPA.
Incredible content.
Everything at Once will keep you up to date.
Amazing guests.
What you doing? Come through and hang with Tony and Dave.
Community driven.
Bringing everything at once from around the way. Everything at once from around the way. Hey.
Please listen. We love you. Everything at Once.
Everything at Once.
Hello again, all you intergalactic listeners. We would like to start today's broadcast with a special thanks to all of our Patreon producers. Brian G, Josh W, Ian D, Nick G, and Sadie M.
Patreon is an awesome way to support this show and say thanks. You can become a Patreon supporter by clicking the link below and choosing to be an intern, assistant, or producer level supporter.
And when we hit 10 Patreon supporters, Dave is going to perform an incredible feat that is yet to be determined.
Hopefully it's something good.
We also want to thank all the local businesses and sponsors that supported this episode. These businesses get the Everything at Once stamp of approval. We couldn't do it without them. And for those of you who have not heard, there are some interesting changes going on at Cauldron and Thorne.
Yeah, what's going on there?
2 years ago, America's first family of darkness landed in Erie, Pennsylvania. In a few short months, they built the world's largest shop, dedicated to the magical arts and metaphysical sciences. This summer, they invite you to explore the shadows of the human experience. A carefully curated catalog of arcane artifacts and occult ephemera for the discerning collector. Cauldron and Thorne proudly presents the dark curiosities of the vault.
Well, Dave, they invited me back, and I checked it out, and I've got to say there is some incredible, extraordinary, paranormal stuff back there that's really just, it really takes it to the next level. They're going above and beyond what they're used to out there.
You always get all the sneak peeks. Damn it. But you know what?
Next time.
Next time, indeed. I'm super pumped, though. Is there anything else you can say about it?
Well, not a whole lot right now. You're just going to have to go back there and check it out yourself when the vault is finally open.
And I will be going there. We'll be going to Cauldron and Thorne, which is located at 2724 West 8th Street. I'll be going there in person to see what's in that vault, since you already got that sneak peek, you bastard. But anyways, I guess we should just get back to promoting the sponsors.
Yeah, let's get back to promoting the sponsors. Solid State. Solid State takes pride in all home remodeling projects. Solid State specializes in bathroom remodeling, kitchen renovations, windows and door installation, custom design work, and more, including painting, flooring, drywall, siding, decks. Get your free quote today by calling Nick at 814-397-7854. Solid people, solid product, Solid State Construction.
Got a problem with your car? Tommy's Automotive can take care of everything car-related. Tommy's Automotive is a reliable, trustworthy service provider.
That's right. Tommy's Automotive can take care of brakes, exhaust, fluid changes, spark plugs, and all other maintenance needs.
Tommy's Automotive also does fluid film undercoating to keep your car from getting eaten alive this winter by rust. Book your appointment today. Call Tommy at 814-384-8088.
And now, what you've all been waiting for, our next guest, Adam Holquist,
Ooh.
a.k.a. Onewayness.
Onewayness.
Known for dropping those sick trance and ambient beats.
Beats, music. He's going to explain it to you. He's the expert, not us.
He's the expert, and it's great to sit down and chat with him a little bit about his music that he's creating. It really was awesome, and I enjoyed listening to it. It's great for meditating or doing creative activities, and we really hope you guys enjoy this show.
We know you will.
That's what we were doing. when I got my cheap mic for doing the show from my house on Sundays. It was like,
What was it called? Social distance.
Social Distancing Variety Hour.
That's such a cool name.
Very nice.
Yeah, I bought like a $30 Amazon mic, just like quote unquote large diaphragm condenser. It's a Neewer brand, Neewe.
Ooh, never even heard of it.
No, it's cheap and terrible, but like it was literally $30 or $40, but it came with a like desktop gooseneck clamp
Those are
thing,
nice.
And one of these guys,
The pop filter.
and a pop filter, like a circular pop filter. So
For
I'm like,
$40.
yeah. So I was like,
worth it for the
literally,
other stuff.
if I throw the mic in the trash,
Right.
the rest of the stuff that I got for free with it is almost worth what I paid for it.
Exactly.
And it's been perfectly fine. Like I produced one of the tracks on Elle Taylor's last album. Like she came over to the house and like she sang her vocals through that mic. So it's like it's on Elle Taylor's album. It's on every live stream I've done from my house, and it was super cheap and
Good.
Yeah,
I think that's good. You're staying true to the roots of variety radio show hours. It probably cost $40 to produce it back in like the 30s and 40s.
Right.
So you really were on brand with that, you know?
yeah, like yeah, like it's like I try and do this like kind of quote unquote high tech stuff in sort of a DIY punk rock kind of way. So
Appreciate that.
yeah, and like I like my fancy toys and I like my good stuff that I've got, but there's sometimes you just need like enough tool to do the job, and what's the Harbor Freight equivalent of getting a microphone? You go on Amazon and you get the $30 condenser mic from a brand you've never heard of that sounds fine.
Right. They do for the most part. We tried with condensers for a little bit, but the ones that I bought are just so sensitive that you could hear Austin walking around upstairs on the ceiling.
Well, you get so much room noise too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like these dynamic ones a lot better. Adam, it's so cool. Thanks again for coming down here and hanging out with us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
So I was listening to your music earlier today, your solo stuff, Onewayness.
That's me.
And I greatly enjoyed it, and it was not really what I was expecting because I know you from like LEC and stuff like that. So I'm thinking like, a bunch of interesting loops, some jazzy piano, maybe a little bit of funk flavor in there. Heavy bass lines.
Yeah, not a lot of bass lines in most of that stuff.
There was not any at all. Every now and then I would think, like, at least early on when I was listening to it, I was like, okay, it's gonna develop into, not that it's not a song, but like more of what I think of as a traditional song. I'm like, okay, here's it goes. It's the melody starting to come in and everything's starting to fill up, and that never happened. But it was great. I enjoyed it. I like ambient music like that. And like what kind of genre would you consider that, your music?
I mean, it's definitely ambient. I intentionally rewrote my bio a couple of years ago to take the word ambient out of it.
Oh, okay.
Like because ambient music means so many different things to so many different people. Like there's, if you're a raver, if you're a techno person, if you're a house person or whatever, ambient is like that, but down tempo, that, but more chill. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot of stuff that gets marketed or gets sold as ambient music that is very,
like lo-fi hip hop almost.
Yeah. and I love that lo-fi hip hop stuff.
Right.
And, some of the stuff I make kind of approaches that lo-fi hip hop stuff, and I dig that stuff for sure. But the stuff that I kind of don't want to be associated with mostly is the new age stuff that gets sold in like gift shops and gets. And
you're not the kind of music that I would expect to buy at a gift shop CD or like a.
you guys are both a little bit younger than I am, but like, you know, you used to go to these, you know, sort of resort towns, and there would be like the sort of hippie shops, and there'd be all these little CD kiosks of like beautiful piano music, and
Right. Great to listen to on the beach.
forest on a summer evening and shit like that. And like, you know, there are elements of that stuff in some of what I do.
You can
but,
hear the forest in some of your songs.
Oh, there's literal forest in some of my songs.
Exactly.
I was gonna
Some
say
of it-
I listen too. Yeah, a little forest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
A
and
forest.
yes, a forest.
Right, there we are.
Right, over my shoulder. Somebody's clipping. Is it me? I think it's me.
It's all right.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't want to be those like walk on a forest in a summer evening kind of, you know, things that you, you know, put on for your yoga classes and stuff like
Right.
that. And not hating on yoga, not because, you know,
Yoga classes
I would
need their music.
I would love to be music for yoga classes, but like so much of that stuff is just so kind of insipid, and that's the stuff that I kind of want to distance myself from a little bit.
It's like pretentious.
Oh, and
Oh, and I'm not afraid of being pretentious.
No, not you, but
no. I'm saying like I embrace my pretentiousness. I
Right.
own my pretentiousness for sure.
that's the only way you can be successfully pretentious. I feel like is just to really
Accept it.
sink
Just lean into it
Sink your
completely.
teeth into
Yeah, right.
it. You know, you're
Yep.
pretentious. Yes, I am.
I'm
Thank
a
you.
snob.
Yes, I am. Oh, you know, I will never pretend to not be a snob. I am a snob for multiple things.
Exactly.
For sure.
For sure. But I greatly enjoyed it, and some of the stuff that I really liked is like the foresty stuff. You know what I mean? You have songs that you're listening to, and you hear the crickets chirping in the background, and you got this kind of casual drone or these really chill melody or like tones that are going on, and it was great music to work to today.
Awesome.
Yeah, I got a bunch of stuff done. It was fantastic.
Well, and that's kind of one of my favorite things that I get told a lot. Like people who, you know, I've got friends who are artists, friends who are writers, friends who do things like that. And one of my favorite things to hear that I do get told kind of a lot is that people like to use it as music to create other things too. And like, that's awesome to me. Like that, and that's not what I make it for. Like, I'm not here making like, you know, lo-fi beats to study to.
Study
But-
slash relax
to
slash
study / relax.
game slash
Yeah.
whatever.
But, you know, the fact that people do, you know, find it conducive to
That kind
bringing
of
out their
thought.
own creativity, you know, bringing out their own. Yeah, I like that people get some sort of contemplative use out of it. And
Absolutely.
use maybe isn't the word, but you know what I mean.
It's a lot easier to do with music that isn't lyrical or
Yeah.
lyrical based. You know, I don't think that's just me. That's a pretty common thing, but that's my favorite thing with this type of music is it's almost like reading a book to me. Like you use your own imagination like more than you would like watching a movie or listen to like a pop song that has the lyrics thrown at you. You get to kind of more create your own adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, choose your own adventure music.
your own adventure
That's what you
music. I
should
like
call
that.
it.
I
Yeah,
like
choose
that.
your own adventure
That's
music.
a fine genre name right there. So how did you, when did you start playing music? Has it been a lifelong thing? I'm sure it has. Most of the music
Yeah,
that's on here.
I started as a bass player.
Okay.
You know, and I picked up bass when I was, I think about 14, 15, and was in like garage bands that never went anywhere in high school.
Fun.
And then went off to college, and college got hard and didn't really have time for playing music much in college. And then it was kind of right after college that I was unemployed and broke and not leaving my house. And I made what ended up being the first Onewayness EP years and years before it ever turned into an ongoing project. I had just gotten, this was like 2000, 2001. Dating myself here, but got my first CD burner for my
sweet.
for my desktop computer at the time, and it came with some music software. It came with this program called Acid, which has it's gotten lumped into some other program. I don't even know what, and it came with a bunch of loops and a bunch of sounds, and I found a bunch of other sounds. I'm like, I'm gonna experiment with this and figure out what I can make out of this. And over a bunch of nights in like 2002, I made like 15, 20 minutes of music and went, awesome, that's an EP. I'm putting that out.
Sure, why not?
And it was like, that's a fun thing I'll never do again. And And then
Little did you know.
Little did I know. And then, kind of got back into playing bass and played in other bands. I was in a band with Matt Texter for a while called The Moralists.
Yeah,
and
he's fantastic.
Yeah, Matt's a great pal. I know you guys have had him on the show. But that was like 2005, 6, 7. Played in a couple other bands. And then it was, I guess, about 2010 or so. I had gotten a new computer at the time and started installing some music software.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to start playing around with this again. And there was a series of shows that happened at the time. There were, I think, 3 or 4 of them called Barrage. It was basically like we're going to pull bands out of a hat. Then it kind of turned years later into a thing called Purple Jam that we did for a couple of years. I don't know if you heard about that, but it was basically, anybody who wants to do it, we're going to, every band gets a guitarist, a bass player, a drummer, a whatever. And you got 6 weeks to go off, write a set, play a show. So the band that I got drawn with at some point ended up with 3 bass players. So I'm like, I'm
funky shit right there.
Yeah.
well, that would have been one way to do things. So I'm like, I'll just opt out of playing bass for most of this, and I'm going to make some weird sounds and, play some guitar and do some effects and, make some beats and, drop some samples. And so that kind of got me back into exploring some of that kind of
The technology
weird
side of
sonic stuff and technology. And then I kind of had a bunch of ideas that got left on the cutting room floor for that show. And I'm like, this is a thing. I need to finish this. And that kind of became the first proper Onewayness album, which came out in fall of 2011. And then I've kind of been at it ever since. And then it kind of became and even at that time, it was like, it was very much a studio creation and, put together a track at a time and no real thought given to how am I going to play this live? How am I going to, do this as a
performance or
do this as a performance or anything. It was just making a record. And then I found some opportunities to go out and perform, and I'm like, well, I guess I gotta figure this out. So, some of that early stuff I did adapt to be able to play, and I wrote some new stuff, and I figured out how to kind of improvise with instruments and technology. And
sure.
And now that was about 2011 that I started performing with it, and I've been at it since then.
I'm sure I see like so many people using loop pedals and stuff anymore for one way, or not for one way, but for one man band like productions. What I mean? You got like he'll lay down like a bass line or a drum track or whatever, a guitar track, and then he'll loop it and loop over it, and you end up with something that's really complex and beautiful at the end of it.
Yeah, and I do a certain amount of that. I actually end up using software loopers more than hardware pedal loopers.
Right.
I do have a looper on my pedal board because I've finally become a pedal board guy after telling myself for years I was not going to let myself be a pedal board guy.
Some people love those things too, though.
I like it okay, but I like my software looper better because I can do multiple loops that are not all the same length, which when you're making layers and trying to do textural things, having a loop and you can do longer loops too. Like the looper pedals, you can loop 2 bars or 4 bars or whatever. So if you're building rhythmic stuff that's in time with itself, then that's great. But being able to have 2 loops that aren't at all in time with each other and are kind of drifting back and forth over each other, and you got one that's 12 seconds long and one that's 16 seconds long, and you're adding to one and then switching to the other and adding to the other and letting both of them decay at different amounts. So like
right.
it lets you get deeper with the texture than
right.
just a looper pedal where it's like, let me put down the bass line, let me put down the 2-chord chunk thing.
Having one longer than the other two, I feel like really makes it, it changes it.
Yeah, it makes it evolve more. Like it's not.
Are those headphones okay for you? Is the cord long enough? You want me to adjust it? You good?
It's a little bit wrapped around the leg of the table, or something.
Let's switch that up for you. You look like it's bothering you a little bit here. You want to take them off?
Sure.
And I'll unwrap them here. Here, over here.
Do, 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 do,
Oh, that's better.
do. Bow, 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 this
We'll
is-
chop that out.
No, I was giving it the good fucking standby music there.
We'll see. We'll stay in. It continues.
Yeah, what do you think I was doing over here? I was filling the space, you know. We're
you, Dave.
in the mood with it. This is very, very avant-garde.
That's right.
That's what I go for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. That's got to be like difficult. That's got to be like more difficult though. It's like, I wouldn't say like fitting a square peg into a circle hole, but it always seems like avant-garde music is just so hard for people to latch on to. It's like always ahead of its time in a way, or it's just trash.
I think it might be. It's harder for the consumer to appreciate, especially like a lay consumer who's used to very certain, song
Yeah.
structure and music structure and stuff.
Well, it's like, you get asked to describe it to people or tell people what it sounds like, and it's like, well, that depends. What are you familiar with?
Right. Yeah. How can I?
So,
make this
like,
make
people
sense
who have
to-
never heard anything beyond classic rock radio, I'm like, well, it kind of sounds like Pink Floyd,
Yeah.
which I love Pink Floyd,
Yeah,
and
sure.
like I've been playing with Darksider for the last couple of
Oh,
years.
awesome! They're
so,
fantastic.
They are.
Yeah, they pulled me in last year, not this past year, the year before.
That's Eric Brewer, right?
Eric Brewer, Ralph Reidinger,
Is Ralph the bass player?
yeah, Ralph is
Cool.
playing bass, Steve Barone's playing
I need
drums.
to get. I'm trying to work out something with Eric right now to get him on the show soon.
Oh yeah,
So
he would
things
be,
to come.
He would be a good guest. I'll put a. He doesn't answer texts or messages
He does
or anything.
sometimes.
Sometimes
We've
he does.
had a few communications. But
Yeah,
we're working it out.
He's a hard man to. He's a hard man to get a hold of.
No, he's a fantastic musician though, and Darksider's wonderful.
Yeah,
I
I
love
thought-
Pink Floyd.
I love Pink Floyd too, and I was just about to say, when people ask you about it, when I'm thinking of that kind of music, it's like, what are you on a scale of Pink Floyd to Yoko Ono Primal Screaming, And if you're closer to the Pink Floyd side of the scale, I'm gonna give you a try.
Honestly, both. Like Yoko gets such a bad rap.
I just said, yeah, I'm not gonna, it just
Yeah.
hurts my ears.
Just hurt my ears.
Yeah, she sounds better than me.
I can go off on my defending Yoko Ono tangent here. There's a lot of Beatle fan dude bros who like to rag on Yoko, which is not what I'm saying that you're doing.
That's
But that is who he is.
That is who I am. Just like you embrace the pretentiousness, I'm a Beatles dude, bro.
Well, I
a
grew up.
deadhead.
I grew up as a huge Beatles fan.
So did I.
And I didn't get it, but there is so much. Like Yoko was a really legitimate, respectable artist before she ever met John. Mm-hmm. Visual artist, conceptual artist, and music. Or if you need to put music in rabbit ears for what Yoko records is just she's a multimedia conceptual artist, and a lot of people like to hate on Yoko, and there's a lot of racism in why people like to hate on Yoko.
Not here. I love Asians. I just want to make that clear to everybody.
And there's a lot of misogyny in why people hate on Yoko. People, not that either of these
Not a
apply to Dave. Not
misogynist
Dave.
either.
Right. Dave's one of the good ones. But yeah, a lot of people, like, it's lazy to hate on Yoko because you hate women. It's lazy to hate on Yoko because you're a racist.
Right.
And so much of the hate, and it's maybe not lazy, but it's real easy to hate on Yoko because you don't understand conceptual art or anything
Outside of your normal cookie cutter.
anything outside of what you've been exposed to.
Right.
So Yoko gets. I am not a. I don't spend a lot of time listening to the vocal stylings of Yoko Ono. I will
Okay.
admit.
I have, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who don't like other screaming music too specifically.
Well, that's the thing.
Like,
I don't really
love
like metal. I don't really like
Okay.
metal either.
Okay.
So it's kind of fits
Well,
into that
and
box.
metal took me some time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't grow up on metal, and I definitely didn't grow up on metal with death vocals.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Or any kind of intense,
Hardcore
extreme
metal
kind of
vocalizations.
yeah. And Opeth was my gateway drug to any kind of like metal with metal with screaming vocals or metal with any kind of death vocals.
I'm gonna have to remember that because I'm trying to convert Celinda into a metal aficionado so she can go to metal shows with me, and it's not worked so far.
Yeah. Well, I grew up on a lot of 70s progressive rock. Like, I grew up into, like, King Crimson and Yes and, like, really old Genesis and stuff like that. So that's kind of, like... And it was kind of from that stuff that I got into a lot of the classic ambient music and the classic experimental electronic music, because it's a pretty short jump from that stuff to Brian Eno and to, you know, Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk and stuff like that. So it was kind of backwards through, you know, some people come to ambient music kind of from the EDM side. Like, they start off with
Trance or house music.
Or industrial or, you know, any of that stuff and just chill out from there. I kind of came to it from around the other side, you know, from the more kind of forward from the roots of it, from the kind of 70s stuff. But it's all kind of there. Like, it's kind of... One side has given me more appreciation for the other, and like I didn't understand hip hop until I was almost 30. Mm-hmm. Like, you know,
That's
it was
strange for being in a hip hop band.
Yeah, like it is. You know, it was one of those things that was around when I was a kid. You know, I was a teenager in the 90s.
Hell yeah.
And
Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and
Snoop
all those people laying it down.
Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and all of that stuff came out when I was in like middle school, early high school.
That was your jam.
Tupac, Biggie.
I loved it in high school, but I was like 10 years behind, I think.
And it was not my jam.
Yeah.
Like I was into all this really, really player oriented music, and you know, very musician oriented music.
Right.
And I really like turned my nose up at this stuff at the time. And I'm like, no, nobody's playing anything. Nobody's like,
right. Where's the music?
Nobody's
Where's the talent?
shredding on this
no,
stuff.
It's
man.
not technical
Like,
enough.
No, it wasn't. And I'm like, and I look back at all of these things that I was too closed minded in my it has to be this, you
Right.
know, it has to be this certain thing
Your
at the time.
pretentiousness.
Like I said, I lean into my pretentiousness.
Right.
Like, and like I didn't appreciate Nirvana when Nirvana came out. I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, it's not like super technical music.
Yeah,
It's
like-
pretty simple,
yeah, it's not King Crimson.
right? I felt the same way about a lot of metal music because I loved like the really fast melodic death metal with double bass and really intense melodies and harmonies and stuff like that. And then I'd hear other ones that were like Tool or like Dream Theater, and I'm like,
Okay.
like it's still okay, but these guys are obviously not as talented.
Well,
as...
and Dream Theater was a big gateway thing to metal for me. Like,
Sure.
You know, I first heard Dream Theater in probably 95. I got Awake when Awake came out.
That's early Dream Theater.
Yeah, that's the third album. But like it had gotten, you know, Mike Portnoy was getting. My brother's a drummer, so I read all the drum magazines at the time. My brother, who's younger than me, I read all the drum magazines at the time, and like this guy Mike Portnoy gets talked about in all the drum magazines about how he's the next whatever. And you know, everybody, all the other guys in the band get talked about as like, oh, they're such great players.
The guy, the man, the best.
So I checked it out and I'm like, oh, this is really heavy. I don't know that I'm ready for this. And I still really liked Rush at the time. Like I've outgrown Rush. Like I don't care anymore about Rush. But I was a big Rush fan when I was like, you know, 14, 15.
Right.
At the age that's an appropriate age to be a big Rush fan.
I still like Rush. I wouldn't say I'm a big Rush fan, but I definitely enjoyed their music a lot.
And so like that was the hook for Dream Theater for me. I'm like, it's kind of like Rush,
There you go.
but heavier. So like that was the part that appealed to me about them at the time, and now that's the part that I don't like about them at all.
You know what got me in high school was I never got emo music. Like I hated it. Like emo music, that whole scene. When I was younger, was all rap, all hip hop. Like
Okay.
Like when I was in high school, that's all I listened to was rap music. That was my jam. And like the emo music, or like some of the punk music, some of the metal, but more like the punk emo. I'm like, this is just depressing. You know, like Hey, maybe I missed the point on it, but I was just like, this is stupid. Like, I'm gonna listen to DMX, you know.
So what was emo at that time? Are we talking like Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance?
Yeah, like Coheed and Cambria.
Okay. Well, Coheed and Cambria is interesting because it's like that's
a little bit more progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, I was broken at the time. I threw it all into one box, you know, kind of like.
No, and I definitely threw it all into one box when I was, when I was a teenager and into my 20s, and like I feel like, yeah, it wasn't until my late 20s that I started to understand a lot of things, and now like my listening tastes are way more eclectic than they ever were when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there was a lot of stuff that I swore off back then and a lot of stuff that I have learned to appreciate more now, but I was always pretty, my listening was pretty expansive. There were only like certain sections that I didn't like or certain branches of the same tree that I didn't like. But for the most part, I listened to everything: hip hop, rap, metal music, emo music, classic rock, lots of classic rock.
Yeah.
And
I was a big classic rock kid back in the day too.
In middle school, before I discovered emo music, and then I was like, oh, okay, this is like new good classic rock. You know what I mean? Just making those connections between the stuff that we're familiar with.
There's that whole other side of the tree though that gets the most hate, which is country music.
See, I hated country music, but now I really appreciate. I still don't like country music, but I'll say I like folk and I like bluegrass and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you guys are obviously real tight with people like Tyler.
Oh yeah,
people
for
like
sure.
Matt Texter, and then those are my boys. So love what they do,
Right.
which you don't have to stretch it too far to make that country music.
No, it's really close,
Yeah.
but it's just not on the radio.
Right.
It gives me that pretentiousness that I need to make myself feel more important or sophisticated than all the plebeian, the pedestrians who listen to country, the Wolf or whatever on the radio.
The first time, I'm sorry to say this if you're watching, when you're watching, but the first time Tyler Smilo gets a video on CMT, I'm probably going to have to stop listening to him. No, I'm totally joking.
Yeah, that'll be a sad day for everybody, except for Tyler Smilo.
Yeah, he'll be doing it.
He'll be making that CMT money.
Yeah, dude. But it's interesting how music evolves and is progressive, and building those links and stuff like that, and having the open mind to see where the branches of music all kind of tie and coalesce into, similar things that we can enjoy and relate to and have that familiarity with.
Well, and I feel like you make more interesting things when, like, I've got friends who make stuff that on the surface is kind of like the kind of stuff that I'm making. Mm-hmm. But that's also all they listen to. Like, they grew up on 70s and 80s ambient music, and now that's what they make. So, and anything that is too far to the left or to the right of that, they have never heard. So it's not pollinating the stuff that they're making.
Right.
So they're making stuff that sounds exactly like everything they've ever heard. And I feel like to really make stuff that sounds like yourself and doesn't just sound like everything you've ever listened to, you've either got to not listen to anything at all and be coming at it totally blind,
right?
And be like,
me, right
I don't
here.
even know what music is. I'm just vibing right now, or let so much in that it turns
everything
into
at once, baby.
It's everything at once. Yeah, it turns into everything you ever heard, and not just I'm going to make things that sound like this one thing, which is the only thing that I like.
And there's a lot of times where the things that are close enough can kind of coalesce into each other very nicely. Like the LEC, for example, has a little bit of funkiness to them outside of that hip hop branch, and they all kind of come from the same roots. You know? And I think that's really special and awesome, especially when like the genre bending new stuff that wasn't supposed to make sense, but when you put it on your headphones or play it in your car, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is great. And why hasn't anybody done this before?
Well, and the LEC, we're all kind of coming from different places. We've got our areas that we kind of all agree on, or two or three of us agree on, but like Chris Head's a huge metalhead, and Chris Head grew up on Yes and King Crimson and all the same stuff that I did. So there will be these little like heavy things or these little like
Breakdowns and
time
stuff.
signature things that like Chris Head and I will like nerd out at each other across the room on. And Johnny's really into ambient music and electronic music. Like there's a lot of like his own tracks that he's like gone and grabbed a beat off, you know, SoundCloud or whatever. Like there are things that he's made from like really important ambient music. Like it's definitely like that's there in Johnny's DNA. So, you know, there are things that come out when the LEC happens that I'm like, I don't know who this came from because none of us like anything that sounds anything like this. Like, I don't like reggae.
Oh no. Don't say that stuff down here.
That's yeah. Boo. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
Like, I don't really like reggae. None of us really like reggae. But there's reggae stuff that comes out in the LEC every once in a while. And I'm like, I don't know who this came from. And if this were anybody else, I would probably not even enjoy this. But this is a vibe, and we're into it.
We're going, dude. I love reggae.
reggae is pretty dope.
Yeah,
You're the outsider on this one.
yeah, it's okay. I don't mind being the outsider.
So, with all of these different influences coming together, and do you guys have difficulties like tying your stuff together? Or does it go well for you, or magically just seems to happen?
You're talking about LEC.
Yeah.
It depends. You know, I think we can kind of be filters for each other. Like we each of us on our own have our things that we tend to go too far or not enough in one direction, and the other ones can kind of be there to be like, no, let's have one fewer section in this, or like, no, we need to have this not be one 4-chord loop for this entire tune, or and yeah, there are things where the LEC, to me, it definitely, there are a lot of songs that come in as mostly one person's contribution. You know, there are things that we all write in the studio together, but there are definite things that, oh, this is Johnny's tune, oh, this is Pat Roach's tune, oh, this is Chris Head's tune. And sometimes it's like, well, this is a track that Johnny made, but Chris made the beat to it. And now I need to figure out what melodically Chris was doing, and Chris has no idea what melodically Chris was doing. So, and those are the ones that to me end up the most LEC like, is where, like, something we do really well as a band, I think, is we reverse engineer really well as a band. We'll be like, we want to make something that sounds like this, or one of us will come in with a demo of like, here's the thing, no idea what's going on here.
Right. Let's figure it out.
Let's figure it out. Let's work backwards until it sounds like us.
Cool. That's an interesting process to draw from like that and kind of do that reverse deconstruction. I haven't heard any of our musical guests describe their process like that yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think so. I think that's unique. It's cool too. I've been listening. I've known Johnny for a very long time. It's been cool listening to how over the years with the different makeups of the band, how it's grown and gone in different directions with the music that's been put out.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the LEC. It's always been some of my favorite local music.
It's made me such a better player too, because like when I joined the LEC in 2014. And I was like, at that point I was only a keyboard player enough to serve what I was doing. And all of a sudden it was like, shit, I need to learn parts. I'm going to have to play solos. What did I just sign myself up for?
Learn scales and all your chords. And
Yeah, and I mean, like, I knew my chords okay, my theory's okay, but just my chops, like, you know, Onewayness is not fast music mostly.
No.
Like, there is not a whole lot of like executing any kind of like
technicals,
fancy finger work in most of what I'm doing. It's you know, it's one note and then eventually another note. Like there's not a whole lot of like, you know, playing in really tight time. There's not a lot of playing very parts that need to be exactly what they are. So like it has done wonders for just
musicianship?
my musicianship as a keyboard player. And I joined the band with all of this existing material. You know, they had 2 albums out at the time that I joined, and that was what we were playing. Like the second one, the self-titled, the Lower East Side Connection one, was still pretty new at the time. So it was basically here's
the stuff.
Learn it all.
Right.
And the one person who really, from a technical standpoint, knew how it all worked is the one person who was no longer in the band.
Oh no.
The one person who like would have been able to tell me like, oh, this is a B minor. Oh, it does this. It was Pat Troster, which is the guy who I replaced in the band. So they had like partial notes on some of it, and you know, some stuff that was partially right and partially not right on some of it. So it was a lot of just like put the record on, figure it out by ear. So, and which is a great skill as a player, and it was great practice at that skill as a player.
Right. You don't have a choice other than to do it that way, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're not given a choice and we only have like that option of learn this or don't learn this, you either sink or swim, you know, and that kind of separates. I feel like that's a good characterization of like people as person, like versus people who are going to succeed and the people that are going to give up halfway through when things get challenging.
Yeah. Well, and like now doing Darksider, like it comes so much easier than I expect it to, because I'm learning Pink Floyd songs the same way, like putting on the record and figuring out how they go. It's coming so much easier than I expected, and I kind of realized at some point, like, oh, this is because of the LEC.
Yeah.
Like, it's a weird notion to think that being in the LEC makes me better at playing Pink Floyd.
Right.
But it's true.
Well, a lot of the same skills and stuff obviously transpose themselves onto Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
And the learning of the material, obviously.
Yeah.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah,
You put the time in and you'll be given some sort of beautiful rewards down the road. So what do you got going on recently? Is there anything coming up?
Recently or coming up?
Coming up, sorry.
Both.
Recently.
Both. What's been happening and what's gonna happen?
Yeah. Recently, I saw you at Feed. I saw some Instagram stuff. I saw you there.
Yes.
But we must have rolled out of there before you went on.
Yeah, Onewayness played at Feed for Gallery Night. It will have been about a month ago at the time that you're hearing this.
Wow, you did that better than we do.
Yeah,
usually.
that's calendar math in my head. And end of June, Onewayness will have played at Feed for Gallery Night, which was great fun. Feed has been an awesome, exciting discovery.
Yeah, it looks like that's going to be. I mean, Brent, we got to get Brenton on here sometime too. We're working on that, but he's doing in some really cool, innovative, interesting things down there for sure.
Yeah, and he's really only getting started. I wandered into the place about a year ago. They kind of had a. I don't know how much of the space you got to see while you're there. That there's, I mean, the building is gigantic. The building is 50,000 square feet.
Right.
For anybody who hasn't been there, but they have this garage space downstairs that faces out towards the back alley, which is like the same back alley that's the back alley behind Callie's, which they're now calling the Sandbox.
Sweet.
So they had kind of a soft opening. The rest of the building was like not ready to have people in it yet, but they did a kind of soft opening in this garage space, opening into the back alley last August, which is when I went down and met Benton, and got to see the building and stuff. And yeah, he's got big plans for the place. Like they've started having residencies and guest artists that are there all through this summer, kind of on rotating different sets of guest artists there every couple of weeks.
Yeah. Doing
new installations of audiovisual art and usually some kind of workshop or performance or both while they're there.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to get involved in a couple of those, either helping to bring in some extra artists or playing some of those. And, I've been hosting experimental shows in Erie for the last 10 years or so. I've got the Electroflux Experimental Music Series is my series of events that I do. And Feed has been able to be a home for some of that too, which has been really exciting. Because I walked into the place, I'm like, oh my God, I want to do everything I ever do here.
Right.
Like I want this to be my treehouse where I get to make all the music now.
Right.
The factory.
The audio stuff is very interesting, but it's very much a visual place, and it seems like all of the audio stuff definitely has some sort of visual aspect that's like interactive a lot of times, or some way to kind of complement the music that's going on.
Yeah, well, and that's very much Benton's background. He's a video artist.
An analog video artist, which is like, I didn't even know such a thing exists.
Yeah, he's got analog like video synthesis hardware and stuff like that. He's got some crazy
He's
gear.
like it's like, you see I've seen the videos on like YouTube where people are doing like analog mixing and audio, and they got like 10,000 chords, and they're like plugging things on different soundboards and doing all this wacky stuff. That's kind of what I imagine him doing, except he's probably a lot more careful than...
He's not as careful as you might think. He's a little bit of a wild card in all the best ways.
It reminds me of like what maybe like Andy Warhol's Factory or like the Merry Prankster acid tests would have been like in the 60s. Just a mixture of music and like, you know, visual and light work and stuff. And,
and a lot of openness to experimentation.
Exactly,
and all of that. And you know, trying to create community and create a scene and all of that for people doing wild audio visual stuff, which is super exciting for me, because I hang out with people like that.
I think it's super interesting, and we've talked about, I can't remember which guest, and I apologize to whoever this was we talked about it with, but I think it's so cool and interesting in Erie because we've talked with multiple people, and you see that for the mid to small sized city that we are, we have really like a big city vibe for the art scene around here.
Yeah.
So many artists and musicians.
Or like something like this, I feel like you wouldn't find like Feed. I don't think you'd find that in many like comparable sized cities across the country.
Well, or if you did, it would be so lost in the shuffle that you might not even notice.
Right.
Right. I mean, I'm sure there's places like Feed around that also are in big cities that still don't get noticed.
Right. Well, and you know, I've toured with Onewayness and toured with some of my other projects, and one of the nice things, and maybe I'm biased because I'm from Erie, but one of the nice things about playing in places like Erie is like you can gather all the weirdos in Erie in one place and have a pretty happening party.
Yeah.
Like I played in Brooklyn one time. And happening in Brooklyn on the same night, Jay-Z was playing at the Barclays Center. Animal Collective was playing somewhere else in Brooklyn. And I forget what the third thing was, but like I was only my own fourth choice of shows happening in Brooklyn.
There's a lot to
night.
Compete with.
Yeah, and you know, in Erie, and it happens in Erie too. You know, and part of that is something I think we need to work on as a scene, and that's communication between
venues and events
and people who are doing similar things. But you know, it does happen in Erie.
That's
too,
like the worst part of booking any event.
It's like, shit, I didn't realize it was going to be.
Well, it's just like setting up dates that work with everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that adds a whole nother level of complexity. I agree. It would be tremendously valuable, but that would be also a tremendously difficult job to try.
The more moving parts you add, the harder and harder it gets.
And sometimes these bands that can come by can only come by, you know, one time. You know what I mean? It's only once in their loop.
And you get like, you know, if you book them too early, you know, you maybe want to wait around, see, you know, make sure there's not something that'll take away from the audience. But you book it too early, and then another venue like puts out a similar type band or something. You're like, oh shit!
It's all about opportunity too.
Yeah.
When the big fish swims on your hook, you gotta fucking reel that bitch in.
Yeah, that is true. Erie's such a weird, like, sometimes I go to a show and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be crazy, it's gonna be packed, and there's like not really anybody there. Then other times I'm like, oh, it'll be a chill night, and it's just like sold out, you know.
They gotta compete with like Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Buffalo too some nights, you know.
That's true.
Well, and especially in post-COVID times, you gotta compete with people's couches.
Yeah, sure.
Like that's honestly, that's the competition now. It's not other shows, it's people not wanting to go anywhere or do anything.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I get it, it's real. like, and in the streaming era and all the world's entertainment at your fingertips all the time, like, people do not go out the way people used to go out.
No, I mean, I think you really gotta
Hold up, just
Everything at once.
We're talking about everything at once,
baby.
Yeah.
We're talking about what you've been doing recently and what you will
Trying to
continue to
coordinate.
do in the future.
Yeah.
Coordination.
Coordination between venues and
Coordination
stuff like
between
that.
venues. That's wishful thinking. But yeah, I mean, it's a thing that I think one of the things that I think the scene
It
could
would
do
benefit.
a little bit better at.
Sure.
And I don't know how to make that happen.
You gotta be the best goddamn promoter on the face of the planet.
You gotta just we'll enact a monopoly, and we'll put me in charge of everything at once, and I'll just coordinate all the bands and line everything up.
That sounds exhausting.
That sounds exhausting. I don't want that job. I was just using myself as an example, but that would really be the only way I could do it, and I don't think that's ever gonna happen.
I think you'd have to have someone in this day and age who is just a wizard with social media, just a top of the line fucking.
It's not even social
influencer.
media. It's just like sending out 5,000 texts all the time everywhere, which
Yeah.
is not fun.
It's one of those things I sit around sometimes and go, I wish I had an intern.
Yeah. I'm hoping I can get an intern at my new jobs eventually. That's going to be really cool. He's going to...
Yeah. Like, don't we all just need an underling in our
Yeah.
lives to be like,
My
"Oh,
personal assistant.
I don't have time to do this. Will you take care of this for me?
Right.
And just let me know when it's done.
The dream someday.
Well, we were talking about Feed and like Benton from Feed. He's got interns, and like if he can have interns,
I'm sure he does. He probably has a whole gaggle of interns.
If he can have interns, why can't I have interns? I probably could have interns. I've given this more than a little thought.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's the dream.
Yeah, the dream is interns. The dream is underlings to do my
So when you were at Feed, did you do you had some videos going on in the background. Was that you controlling that?
No, that was Zion Thompson. That was VJ Betty Sweaters.
Oh, yeah. He just, I remember seeing that now.
Yeah. Zion is an Erie native who's been mostly living in San Francisco and LA for the last few years, but has family here and comes back to town because he's one of the organizers of the Firelights Festival,
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
which I'm going to be playing this year. Onewayness is going to be playing this year. So
I'm unfamiliar with it. Tell me a little bit about it.
Firelights Festival, it's kind of a jam band and EDM and weirdo electronics festival, but with a lot of video and live projection elements and
Fantastic.
stuff
Perfect.
too. I think this is going to be the third year. It had started out in Edinburgh at I don't remember the name of the park, but the park is like backed by the volunteer fire department across from General McLean High School.
Okay.
But this year it's moving to the Heron, so it's going to be at the Heron
Ooh,
this year.
sweet.
So multiple stages at the Heron, 3 days of
Fun.
electronics and jam bands, and I'm going to play. I'm not sure yet what night or morning that I'm playing, but I'm going to be playing a very late night or early morning.
Your music's perfect for that.
Graveyard shift set, which I'm
Yeah.
honestly pretty excited about. Like I like one of my live albums. I have a live album called Vigil that was recorded on.
I listened to that one.
There's a radio show on WXPN in Philly called Stars End that's every Saturday night, 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., which I've played live on a couple of times, I think 3 times now. But that live album was recorded live on WXPN from like 4 a.m. to 5 a.m.
That's
So
like the
it's-
magic time. That's when especially if I don't have much sleep around that time, my brain starts acting a little weird, and I like that.
Yeah, and like that happens when you're trying to play music at that time of night too.
Sure.
Like that, and yeah, it's that time of night, kind of regardless of how much sleep you've had or how much caffeine you've had, does interesting things to your brain, I think.
Yeah.
So like that to me is an album that kind of has that late night feel to it, and a lot of my stuff I think works as that kind of late night feel. So I'm happy to be playing one of those
Cool.
kind of slots. I think that'll be real fun.
Yeah, that's special too. I think being outside of your normal consciousness, whether it's from the time or the sleep or the caffeine or whatever, it's really interesting to me because I just like viewing things from a perspective that I wouldn't normally have under standard conditions.
Yeah, and
you know?
things kind of come out that you're not quite sure where they came from, and
Yeah.
that's
It's beautiful.
that's conducive to the kind of stuff that I get myself into. So I like having that. One of my plans, long-term plans, bucket list plans. There's this guy Robert Rich, who's one of my big influences, who used to do these sleep concerts. He still does them every once in a while, but used to do them a lot in the early '80s, where it's basically an 8-hour overnight set. Like bring people in like 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Go all night long.
Go all night, like basically. And the plan is like bring sleeping bags, bring a mat, bring something to lay down on. And he used to just like host them at his apartment in California in the '80s. So like start off a little, kind of middle of the road, and then lull people to sleep.
Yeah.
And then the idea is that everybody is asleep at some point, and you sort of guide them through their sleep, and then you wake them up in the morning. And I think he used to like make coffee or make tea or something
Wake everybody up?
for people to wake up to in the morning. So that's one of my long-term things I'd like to do at least once. Like
It gives me like festival vibes, because everybody's kind of passing out at different times. You'll wake back up and there's still people at the fire at 4 a.m, and there's music going on down the road or the campsite road or whatever. It's cool.
Are you guys Chafee's goers?
I haven't been recently, but I went to Chafee's for, like 2007 to 2013 every year.
Yeah. Well, it
Nelson's Ledges.
It makes me think of like you wake up at Chafee's no matter what time of the middle of the night is. There's some sort of drums coming from the woods.
Right, yeah. And lasers flying through the air and lights and that maybe the people next to you got that big projector setup that they do out there. There's always stuff going on. Any festival.
Any festival.
I don't think I've ever slept at night at a festival.
I definitely have briefly, but for the most part, I'm a not sleeping festival goer as well.
I'm too old to not sleep at festivals.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get great sleep at festivals, and I if anything, I end up waking up earlier than I want to at festivals, rather than like being up later than I want to at festivals.
The light has a big effect on me too. I have to have like blackout shades, or I'm up at 6 a.m. with the sun every day. I am anyway. Even with the blackout shades, it doesn't help. But
Yeah.
I can sleep through anything.
I can fall asleep, but staying asleep is a completely different story.
It depends on the situation, but when I'm at a festival around all those people, it doesn't have to be like a drug thing per se. Like I just don't trust motherfuckers.
That's
so
true,
I'm
too.
staying awake at all moments in time until
Watch your back
exactly.
at the festies.
I don't care. They say free loving hippies. I don't trust them.
Speaking of Chafee's, though, LEC will be back at Chafee's this year for the first time in a couple of years, which is exciting. We're playing the late night, the double late night side stage slot on Friday night, which is kind of one of our favorite slots to play. You get to play 2 short little 25, 30-minute sets. So yeah, we'll be right before the headliner and right before the band before the headliner on Friday night at Chafee's. So we're looking forward to that. And then LEC is also playing at Celebrate Erie this year. We're opening for Flo Rida.
No way, you guys are opening for him?
Yes, we
that
are.
is so cool.
It hasn't been like super announced yet, but we are opening for Flo Rida at Celebrate Erie, and that's going to be. The plan is we're going to make that kind of a celebration of the whole history of LEC. I think pretty much everybody who's been in the band at some point is going to come back and at least guest on a couple. Pat Troster's going to come back for a couple. Keith G's going to sit in on a couple, we think. Chris Corona is going to come back from Portland for some. Justin Tapper's going to sit in on a few. So it's going to be like starting at the earliest beginning and sort of get all of those lineups on stage for at least a couple, and sort of big blowout celebration. We're not calling it. We never call anything the last LEC. We like the last several LEC shows have been like, well, we got no plans after this, and that's true for these current ones too. We got no plans after this, and we're all kind of doing our own thing. I mean, I've always been doing my own thing, but Johnny's.
Busy man.
Johnny's a busy man. Johnny's more or less running the Rook, and Johnny's got his own solo record that he keeps trying to finish. And Chris Head's got a big boy job now, and Dan Head's got kids, and I've got kids, and Ton Foch has kids, and Pat Roach has kids. So we're all
Makes it hard.
We're all busy with stuff, and we've all kind of got our own priorities. So maybe there will be things after this, maybe there won't be things after this, but this will definitely be
That's huge.
So definitely be the biggest stage and the most people we've ever got to play in front of. So it's like this is a chance to kind of do the do the Hall of Fame induction set
Hell
and get everybody
yeah.
out there and do everything that everybody wants to hear. So
It's gonna be so cool, man. I'm pumped about that.
yeah, I'm excited about it. We're just getting started working on it, and that's gonna be middle of August. I think August 19th, whatever that Saturday is.
Like big crowd of people. That's gonna be so awesome on a huge stage.
Yeah.
Really loud. Oh, it's just what Erie needed for sure.
Yeah,
That's
good.
our studio manager, Gideon.
I get in.
She keeps this whole operation from falling apart.
She does her best. she comes down to make sure we're not fucking around too much.
Yeah. Well, Adam, this has been super cool, dude.
Absolutely.
We've had a great time hanging out here, hearing about what's going on, talking music, and talking shop with you. We appreciate you coming down.
That froze again.
Oh, man. That's okay. We're just going to finish it out.
Do-do-do-do-do-do.
No, yeah.
Stand by for technical difficulties.
No, we're good.
Yeah, they're fine. Yeah, thanks for coming down.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks all of our Patreon members. I don't know why I'm looking at the camera. It
We're
just
looking
broke.
at the camera, looking at you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Don't think we're not.
we are. We're
Yeah.
here.
It's just not looking at us.
And thanks to all our sponsors. Make sure you guys all like, subscribe, follow, all of that fun stuff. Check out Adam and Onewayness. You're on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
You're on YouTube. It's really cool music.
It's on. Not everything is on all the streaming services, but if you do Spotify, Apple Music, any of that, there's at least some selected releases on there. Onewayness.com, onewayness.bandcamp.com, at Onewayness on all the social medias is.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Y'all have a great night. Peace.
Goodbye.
Bye.